Okay, we're in the presence of a quorum, and so I'm going to call this meeting to order. I know that Mr. Berry has already told us he's not going to attend, and here comes Mr. Chang. So the first item on our agenda, as with every meeting, is citizens' concerns. It's an opportunity for people in the audience who have issues that are not on our agenda to speak to them, and we have a citizen's concern. Yes?
Can you just turn on the microphone just for TV?
Can you hear me now? I thought I'd provide some feedback after the left side of Town Hall has been redesigned for 2 years, and it's been in operation for 2 years. I have some observations. I've been an Acton homeowner for more than 40 years, but been active in town government for only the last 8 or 9 years. It gives me a perspective of having to work with town staff. There's a noticeable change in the attitude of town staff. One, being very friendly without exception. Going out of their way to help. No longer departmentalized. And all these changes have made me feel very welcome at taking any problems I have to town staff. I can tell you before that, it used to be, don't bother me. You're taking up too much of my time. So anyway, I credit all these changes to Steve Ledoux's leadership and the selectmen approval of the $600,000 it costs to do this redesign. Thanks for listening to my 2 cents worth.
Thank you, Derek. It's always good to get good news. I was wondering, when you started out, I thought, oh dear, he's going to say they're terrible, they're ignoring, but no, it's great news. And yes, kudos to the town manager and town staff for making it work, but also to citizens like you for also making it work, so thank you. Citizens' concerns, another one. Oh, there are 2.
Good evening, select ladies.
Dr. Donald, could you move the top of the mic down to, yeah.
Good evening, select ladies. I'm Mary Donald, 42 Taylor Road. As my father said, the poor are always with us, but we have seen a ballooning of the needy problem recently. Indeed, the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. Now, volunteerism seems to be at an all-time low. I come to you tonight to urge the people of Acton to respond to the Salvation Army's call for bell ringers. We have made it easier to sign up. We have entered the 21st century, kicking and screaming. We've invoked the internet, www.tinyurl.com Acton Kettle /Acton Kettle. And I might add that the fire department has recently responded to the call, so I want to commend them. Some selectmen also have volunteered, and Senator Eldridge is going to ring sometime before Christmas. So all is not lost, but I appeal to you for a little bit of help. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Donald, and thank you for doing that every year. I do, when I see the pot, I try to, give generously because I feel bad for the people standing there, especially if it's a miserably cold day. But thank you. Yeah, I should probably think about that anyhow in my free time. Yes, citizens' concern.
Good evening. I'm Bob Sekuler. I live at 17 Parkland Lane. The Concord Journal and the Acton Boxborough Beacon newspapers are both owned by Gatehouse Media. the 2 newspapers share an office and staff. They also frequently share content, particularly news of common interest to both towns. The shared content recently has included, appropriately, news of the hearings that you have been holding and have held on Concord's proposed Nagog Pond project. Books on the art of the deal and of negotiation tell us that when you enter a negotiation, it is a poor idea to enter with the belief that you will not prevail. It is even a worse idea to tell your opponent that you believe he or she will prevail. Not a good idea. But that is precisely what Jeff Roloff has done. After your November 20th hearing, Mr. Roloff told Gatehouse media staff that he believed Concord would likely prevail in court. Perhaps he did not realize that his concession would be published in the Concord Journal, but it was. To the delight, I suspect, of Concord town officials and the dismay of many of my neighbors in Acton. In my view, Mr. Roloff's public remark was careless, unwise, and distinctly unhelpful. It fatally undermined his ability to be an effective, zealous advocate for Acton. Therefore, I respectfully request that the board replace him as its attorney in the matter of the Concord water treatment plant, or, failing that, at least hire an effective independent attorney who would work with Mr. Roloff to ensure that our town has the benefit of the zealous advocacy that we deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob, and I apologize for the delay in my responding to your email about the same topic, but I was just so bogged down between town work and I actually have a personal life, so, and that was sort of taking over free time I had, but anyhow, but thank you for your comments. Anybody else, citizens' concerns? All right. Our first appointment is at 10 past, so anyhow. Yeah, I will get my chairman's update. Special town meeting was December 4th. Hence, some people seem to be thinking that the Board of Selectmen are meeting every week this month. Special town meeting was, we were there, we preside, but it was not our meeting. It was a town meeting. And it was, the turnout was overwhelming. We had a delayed start. We didn't start until around 8:30. We didn't dissolve, which is the term for the end of town meeting, until just after midnight. We slogged through it. We had 1,200 clickers to vote with. That actually worked very well once we got through some glitches. But kudos to the town manager, town staff, especially IT, the moderator who led the charge, and all of the people who turned out and stood in lines waiting to even just check in, never mind get into the rooms. But all of the articles passed, some of them by pronounced majorities. So the Acton Boxborough Food Pantry is holding a food drive. The Health Department and Nursing Service are collecting non-perishables through this Friday, drop-off donations at Town Hall in the Land Use Department, which Derek just touted, or the Nursing Service offices at the Human Services and Senior Center, 30 Sudbury Road. The Acting Nursing Service is also collecting new mittens and hats for children and adults at the Human Services and Senior Center, 30 Sudbury Road. There is another CPR training session Tuesday the 19th at 5 o'clock at the Public Safety Facility. It costs $65. There's more information on the website. The Town Manager Search Committee, this is an update. I also put it in my selectmen's reports, but I don't know if people are actually reading those, but there's a lot of information about what we're doing when we're not sitting at these meetings. Chairman Pat Clifford advises that this month the Town Manager Search Committee will be submitting to the Board of Selectmen a town manager profile, which will presumably be used to solicit applications, and also a list of the top issues that the next town manager should be prepared to address, which presumably will be among the topics that the committee will cover during candidate screening interviews. And finally, the selectmen have another regular meeting next Monday on the 18th. The town manager will present his preliminary fiscal 19 budget, and the Acton Conservation Trust will present a check of the proceeds from a remarkably fast and successful effort to raise at least $30,000 toward the purchase of 161 Newtown Road, the open space parcel, the purchase of which special town meeting voted overwhelmingly to approve a week ago. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, and we have been meeting every week, but Madam Chair, if you call a meeting on the 25th, 3 ghosts will visit you, I guarantee it. You actually reported a lot of my stuff. So I just wanted to let everybody know, just an update on our electric aggregation through Dynegy. We have 7,397 accounts taking advantage of Dynegy. 7,263 are the standard enrollment, and then those that have gone the extra green, the Power Choice green enrollment is 134. So actually it's a lot higher than I think a lot of other communities for the extra green. So a lot of people ought to be commended. And as you said, we'll be presenting the town manager recommended FY19 budget next Monday night.
And I'm going to have to go online because our electric bill still says standard service, which presumably is Eversource. I will have to check that out because I don't want to be left out. All right. We have an appointment at 7:10, I have to read a hearing notice. This is a notice of tax classification hearing. The Board of Selectmen will hold their required annual public hearing on the issue of tax classification on December 11, 2017 at 7:10 p.m. in the Faulkner Hearing Room 204 of the Acton Town Hall. The Selectmen are required to hold this hearing annually and receive taxpayer comments as to whether the various classes of taxable property shall be taxed at the same rate or whether different tax rates shall be applied to different classes of property. The hearing will include a presentation by the Board of Assessors detailing the options available under Chapter 40, Section 56 of the Massachusetts General Laws. And we have with our town assessor, Brian McMullen, and I assume you're the chairman of the Board of Assessors, right? Is that?
Yes, Carol Leitner's rep.
Yes,
Yeah.
great, welcome.
Thank you.
And I'll let you take over.
Okay. Great. Well, I have the easy part. I'm going to do a couple of key highlights, and then I'm going to pass it over to Brian to go into a little more detail regarding the tax classification review. So a couple of things. We just wanted to update you on kind of the average residential value in town is now somewhere around $566,000. That's up 1% from last year. And just a reminder that that's based on the 2016 calendar year values. So we will see next year, some other substantial increases, but again, this is dating back to the 2016 calendar year. Condo values are up by 5%, and this was really driven by the condos that are up for sale in the $600,000 to $700,000 range of Quail Ridge. So those are really kind of dominating the condominium portfolio right now. Commercial sector is flat. So what we're seeing is a lot of high vacancies still existing in our commercial office buildings, and we're also seeing an increase in our increase in vacancies in our retail sector. We've lost a couple of key key retailers in town in a couple of the variety of the retail outlets that we have, Gould Plaza, and then also up on Great Road. Other than that, we haven't seen any significant shifts in the tax class from prior year, and so I'm going to pass it over to Brian to spend a little more time in detail on the classification.
Thank you, Carol. So tonight's meeting is a legally required public hearing, as you had mentioned, Madam Chair, and so tonight's, basically, it boils down to 4 decisions that the Board of Selectmen must make, and those decisions will impact what we call the various classes of property evaluations, and we'll get into more detail. But these 4 decisions must need a vote in order for us to basically submit the tax recap form to State Department of Revenue so we can get our tax rate certified. So we'll get right into the hearing. So those 4 decisions that need to be made or 1 adopt a residential factor. So a residential factor of 1 results in a uniform tax rate. This is what we've been doing for the last 16, 17 years or so. So we've had a uniform tax rate here, and we know other communities shift the tax burden, if you would, to the CIP classes, which is the commercial, industrial, and personal property class. We have not done that here in many, many years. Also to adopt an open space discount, and again, we'll get into more details in the presentation as we move ahead, but these are the 4 decisions that must be made or taken this evening. And also whether or not to adopt a small commercial, small residential, or a residential exemption. And then the 4th would be to adopt a small commercial exemption. So getting into the first one, we'll see the impact on what it has on a single-family home as well as a commercial property. So we're given some examples here. So as I had stated earlier, so just a residential factor of 1 would simply, actually this is multi-slide, but this is just kind of showing where the valuations are this year. As Carol said, the residential property, single-family home is up 1%. We're going to see what a residential factor of 1 results in as far as a tax rate, and then if we shift that and what and how it impacts that compared to a commercial property. But right now, we get an average single-family house value of about $566,000. It's up a little over $5,000, so up about 1%. So not a lot of change there. Again, Carol had mentioned this is based on calendar 2016 sales, and we are seeing some change in 17. So our assessments lag between 12 and 24 months behind the times. So on comparison, the average commercial industrial valuation here for 18 is up to 880, or actually it's down 889,278. Carol mentioned it's relatively flat. There's no change there at all whatsoever. You can say, well, why the valuations go down? Sometimes it's through the abatement process. If somebody feels their property value is overvalued, they can challenge it. We may abate that, and then we hold that for several years. So again, that's what we're seeing here. Not a lot of change in the commercial industrial sector. So when we adopt a residential factor, if we adopt a factor of 1, there is no shift to the CIP class, the commercial, industrial, and personal property. If we adopt a factor of less than 1, then the shift actually goes to the commercial and industrial and personal property. So basically, they're going to bear a bigger burden of the tax rate. So the percentages of evaluation are determined, as we talked about, the 80-20 split from back in the 80s, which is now no longer 80-20. It's about 88-12, 88 being 88% of the town's residential, 12% being commercial industrial. Acton can shift up to 150% or, to the CIP classes. So basically, you can shift a good portion of the residential tax burden over to the CIP classes, and we'll get into more of what that looks like. So the adoption, again, of a residential factor of 1 means no shift at all. Again, as status quo, that's what we did last year. That's what we've been doing for the last 16, 17 years. So again, adoption of something less than 1 means you're shifting the tax rate or the tax burden. So in this case, in a single-family home of $566,000, with no shift, we have a rate of $1,938 with a tax bill of $10,978. Just a 5% shift, the rate would go to $1,926, and they would save $68. On a 20% shift, the rate would go to $1,888, and they would save about $283. And so you're saying, okay, so what's the impact on a commercial industrial property? So the next slide here, and that same shift, right, or no shift, the average bill is $16,329. With a 5% shift, they're going to be burdened with about $818 additional taxes. A 20% shift would leverage $3,270 on a commercial property. So again, pretty significant change. Going back to the residential, they would save $283, and yet the commercial property would bear another $3,270. Again, that's because of the relationship, us being heavily residential properties here in town, 88%, commercial industrial being about 12%. So again, the residential factor of 1 shifts, less than 1 shifts to those CIP classes, and we can see that, a 5% or even a 20% shift is pretty significant. And then for FY17, the town of Acton did not shift. We adopted a residential factor of 1. So Basically, open space discount applies, again, a factor to those open space properties where you could potentially give them a discount. We believe that Acton does not have any properties that are eligible for this category. Either there are conservation restrictions on them, or it's town-owned, or they're under a chapter land program, which is a special program. A residential exemption basically reduces the taxable value of the principal residence of a certain or your homestead with certain exclusions. This is up to 20% of the average residential class of property. That would be a condominium, single-family home, two-family home, so on and so forth. It's very complex, it's very convoluted. I'm not even sure if our tax system would handle it. Frankly, there's only a handful of communities in the Commonwealth that have done it. It's really not common, don't really recommend it. Also, to adopt a small commercial exemption, so this up to 10% of the value under certain eligible businesses, which are the Department of Employment and Training determines who they may be, and then the assessors have to determine whether they're eligible or not. So the valuation of their property can't exceed $1 million, and they must have no more than 10 employees. The problem with this exemption is it could be up to 10%, and they could get it's a shift within the CIP class, but the eligible business may not be the real estate owner. And so the exemption goes with the real estate owner, but it may not pass down to the eligible business. Again, very complex, very convoluted. I don't recommend this exemption, never have adopted it, and I think it would, again, I'm not sure if the tax system would actually handle it. So again, I'll go back to those 4 decisions that the selectmen must take. So one would be to whether or not to adopt a residential factor of 1 or something less than 1 that results in a shift of the tax burden to the CIP class. The second would be to whether or not to adopt an open space discount. We believe there are no properties that are classified as open space. 3 would be to adopt a residential exemption, which again, we don't recommend that because it's very complex. And then the 4th would be to adopt a small commercial exemption, and again, not knowing whether that exemption would get passed on to the actual eligible businesses, we would not recommend that as well. In not having really, property values being pretty much stagnant and status quo, we wouldn't recommend that we deviate from the current plan, which is adopt a residential factor of 1 and adopt no open space discount, no residential exemption, and no small commercial exemption.
Thank you, Mr. McMullen. I think that there's a reason that certainly in the time I've been on the board, we've always voted the same way, because essentially if you eliminate the open space exemption, then you have 3 choices that involve shifting the tax burden from residents to the commercial properties, shifting the tax burden between different classes of residential property, or shifting between different classes of commercial property, and anyhow. So comments, questions from the board? Anybody? What I would suggest is if we're ready to take up making motions, the first one is we need a motion to adopt a residential factor of 1, if that's where people are inclined to go. If you want to adopt a residential factor of less than 1, you'd better specify what you were talking about. So
I move that we adopt a residential factor of 1.
Second.
So Katie moves in, Ching Sung second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining. The next issue is whether or not to adopt an open space discount. We can move to grant an open space discount or move not to grant an open space discount.
I move that we not grant an open space discount.
Second.
Katie moves, Ching Sung seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining. Third is whether or not to adopt a residential exemption, either moving to adopt a residential exemption or moving not to adopt a residential exemption.
I move that we do not adopt a residential exemption.
Second.
Katie moves and Ching Sung seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining. And finally, we need a motion either to adopt a small commercial exemption or to not adopt a small commercial exemption.
I move that we not adopt a small commercial exemption.
Second.
Katie moves and Ching Sung second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a form that I need the Board of Selectmen to sign, and if they could make sure that Lisa
Yeah.
gets it at the end of the evening.
If you want to, we'll just move it down the line here. That'd be great. Thank you. Okay, and under Selectmen business, we have one item, approval of proposed relocation of New View easement granted to town, and Mr. Snyder Grant is here to lead us through what this is. There are a lot of documents, but it's pretty straightforward, so go ahead.
Jim Snyder Grant, 18 Half Moon Hill. So I'm here today as a resident of Half Moon Hill, as a member of the New View co-housing community, which is, from a legal point of view, the New View condominium development. The New View on Half Moon Hill was built in the mid-90s. It's a co-housing community, which means that the people that moved there first got together, hired a builder, hired an architect, and wanted to create a pedestrian-oriented space. So the cars are on the edges. Occasionally a delivery vehicle will make its way into the middle of the community, but it's pretty much a zone for people. And when we were working with the town on getting the permits for this, the planning department asked that we have a trail easement to allow people to walk from Central Street into what was then the Cacciatore Conservation Land and is now Guggins Brook Conservation Land. And we were very happy to grant that. Our site plan, which was filed with our development, shows a skinny little line going from the boundary of Guggins Brook Conservation Land and cutting out to Central Street. And that's been in use since the moment we moved in. People in the neighborhood, dog walkers, people from other places come by and park, for example, on Elm Street and walk over and use the trails. And that's been wonderful. One thing that's changed in the last year and a half, which is why I'm here, is that the town has also been taking on being more friendly to pedestrians and has completed extending a sidewalk that runs from Idlewild Farm on the Idlewild Farm side of Central Street, allows people to walk over the railroad tracks and continue on their way to Half Moon Hill. To build that, the town did some landscaping, added a relatively steep bank to the edge there. They did make a break and a guardrail to allow people to walk through. But looking at it afterwards, what I realized was that it's a very steep descent. It doesn't feel safe. At the bottom of this descent is a wet area where drainage from some of the development makes its way out to Guggins Brook. So it's an unpleasant way now. So I consulted with Tom Tidman, Director of Natural Resources, about what we could do. And what he suggested was, instead of trying to build some stairs, which was my first instinct, he said, no, this is the 21st century. We try to build things that are more accessible. We don't want big steps at the beginning of a trail system. So how about we have a trail that goes more from the beginning of the intersection of Half Moon Hill and Central Street and cuts down at a nice gentle angle for a couple hundred feet and then rejoins the existing trail. And that seemed like a wonderful solution. So I took a look at the easement, and it says, this is the signed document with the town, it says the grantor, that's Half Moon Hill, reserves the right at any time and from time to time to relocate the trail or the easement area, but only with approval of grantee, that's the town, which approval will not be unreasonably withheld or delayed. So we've been through a process of laying out a new trail. You have in your packet a tentative plan created by town engineer Paul Campbell, and that shows a redirected trail easement and a redirected trail. We've been before the Land Stewardship Committee. I'm a member of that committee, but I'm not speaking here as a member of that committee. We do have Sherman Smith here from the Land Stewardship Committee if you end up having any questions for them. We also went before the Conservation Commission, who also approved the relocation. They wanted to see they wanted to make it a little more clear that this was a public trail. So we've designed something for that I can talk about if there's any curiosity about that. And now we're here. This is the final stop. If y'all are feeling that it would be okay to approve the change of this trail easement, then we'll go ahead and make it happen. And we've already been in contact with the town staff about getting the new map and filed with the registry so it all becomes official.
Great, thank you, Jim. Questions, comments from the board? Katie?
All right, thank you, Jim. There was a lot of information that you put together and something that seems very easy to say yes to, so thank you for so much background on it. My only question is, I think in looking over the easement, it sounded like it's the responsibility of Newview to build the new trail, but I just wanted to see if that was the case or what you were planning for, who would kind of provide the, the change. And how are you are you getting rid of the old trail or easement part, or, so it's clear that that's, not a safe way to go?
Let me get my actual easement here. Thanks, by the way. So my understanding is that either the grantor or the grantee have the right to maintain a trail there, but not an obligation.
Okay.
So in this case, we would turn to the experts at trail building at the Land Stewardship Committee and say, gee, can you change this trail? We've met with them. They're enthusiastic about taking that on. As a matter of interesting coincidence, I am the land steward assigned to Guggins Brook, so I would be the one making the change, asking for help from other volunteers, as we like to do at the Land Stewardship Committee. So that was the question about how it gets built, and you're asking about brushing in or closing off the other trail.
Yeah, just
there's
so
two
people don't
parts
try
to
to do
that.
that.
The first is that this part of the trail is meadow that's very moist and grows very copiously and quickly. And it only gets brush hogged once a year. So we'll find that by April or May, just by the simple act of not maintaining the old trail, it will start to disappear. The only question that remains in my mind is the gap in the guardrail, which might encourage people to come down. I think once the vegetation comes back in, people will not think of coming down there. I was thinking of adding a temporary sign there just to tell people, trails over that way.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, you just get people that are, kind of set in their ways and might not notice.
I've noticed that people are already avoiding the steep bank and kind of walking around.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Okay, excellent. Well, thank you. I think it's like I said, a straightforward idea, so.
Any other? Joe? Jingson? No?
No, it looks fine to me.
No? Yep. Yeah, it's fine. This is sort of belt and suspenders, because I guess council raised the issue, well, is it Conservation Commission who has to sort of agree to this, or is it the Selectmen, or is it both? And I thought, well, in the interest of being very abundantly cautious, we'll just have the Selectmen weigh in on it and approve it. Yeah, it looks like, I assume, I didn't look at the agreement that's in the packet that we have to sign, but I assume it's the same as what the terms are sort of similar about the grantees being able to make improvements and maintain, because they talk about the grantee and the town is a grantee, so.
I think what's in your packet is the original trail easement.
Yeah.
And we're not actually going to be filing a new trail easement. That language will still stand.
Yeah.
All we're filing is the note that says that, with the property, that says that the path of the easement has changed and that everyone signed off on it, and here's a plan.
Yeah, because it says in here, pretty much says improvements and maintenance that the grantee may maintain, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it
So-
says, my question was related to section 5, where it says that any such relocation will be at grantor's sole expense. It's fine, and Jim's gonna be the one doing primarily the work anyways.
Yeah.
I'm not concerned about it, but I just was curious about what that process will be.
Okay. All right, well, do we have a motion to
I'll
approve
move to
this
approve the
proposed change?
relocation of the Newview easement.
Second.
Okay, Katie moves and Ching Sung second. Any further discussion? Any other comments from the audience? Sherman, you have anything pithy to say to us? That's fine, I won't pressure you. Okay, no further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much to Newview residents for doing this. I think it'll be much better from the sounds of it. So, finally, consent agenda. Item 3, Energy Efficiency Fund Request, Municipal Properties. Item 4, Committee Appointment, Jezanna Gruber, Associate Member, Land Stewardship Committee. Item 5, Committee Appointment, Suzanne Flint, Conservation Commission. Item 6, Accept Gift, Recreation Department, gift totaling $25 from Richard Lyons to be used toward a new recreation facility and playground at Jones Field. Item 7, Accept Gift, Recreation Department, gift totaling $50 from Erickson Gray Mill, Inc. for funding of a new skate park plaza at TJ O'Grady Skate Park. Item 8, Accept Gift, Recreation Department, gift totaling $120 from Unique Nails for funding a new skate park at TJ O'Grady Skate Park. Item 9, Accept Gift, Recreation Department, gift totaling $1,000 from Ruscom Exteriors, Inc. to support the 2018 Summer Concert Series and events. Item 10, Accept Gift, Recreation Department, gift totaling $2,000 from Sorrento's Pizza to support the 2018 Summer Concert Series and special events. Item 11, Accept Gift, Recreation Department, gift totaling $500 from Workers Credit Union to support the 2018 Summer Concert Series and special events. Item 12, Accept Gift, Recreation Department, gift totaling $167.96 from the annual cemetery tour. Item 13, Accept Gifts, Council on Aging, gifts totaling $1,500 for building furnishings at the Senior Center. Item 14, Accept Gift, Acton Nursing Services, gift totaling $150 from Elizabeth Eldridge. Item 15, Request to dispose of obsolete items, Acton Memorial Library. And finally, item 16, Conservation Restriction, 176 Central Street, Mount Hope parcel.
I'll move to approve consent agenda items 3 through 16.
Second.
Katie moves and Ching Sung seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstaining. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Katie moves and Ching Sung second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining.